Welcome, everybody, to Everyday Ethics. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz, here with the lovely Persephone, here to have a great discussion. Persephone, hello.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
And hello to everyone in the audience. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here for this discussion. And per Mr. James Stevens Valiant's suggestion to me, we today are going to discuss the last episode of Seinfeld. Now, I've seen the episode countless times. Persephone, on the other hand, oh, maybe this is the problem. Persephone, on the other hand, has not. Hi, Katie, seen the
Hi,
episode,
Katie.
but she did watch it yesterday, which why do my headphones look all crooked here?
They are crooked.
Uh,
Hello, Cosmic
this,
Wolf.
I think that's the problem. I had them on backwards.
Yo,
All right.
James.
Did I? Hold
Uh,
on. Talk for a second, Persephone, and let me figure out what's happening here.
yes, so for this episode, Michael asked me to watch the final episode of Seinfeld, and I've never really watched much Seinfeld. I've seen a couple of episodes here and there, never seen the finale.
Well, that's just
And
un-American of you.
you don't say.
Yeah. So, anyways, the remember too, we have super chats and super stickers, and folks, they are always appreciated. Believe me. So the final episode of Seinfeld involves, their plane crashes, and they are in, I believe, Latham, Massachusetts, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. And Elaine, George, Kramer, and Jerry, they're standing around with a camera, and then there's this portly fellow who gets mugged for his wallet as he's getting out of his car. And the four of them proceed to mock the guy. They're filming him. They're joking, making jokes about his weight, that sort of thing. And they end up getting arrested for violating a new law they call the Good Samaritan Law. The Good Samaritan Law says that if you can reasonably help somebody and you don't, then your crime is then you're it's a crime and you can be punished for it. So they are arrested. So there's a lot there to discuss, Persephone. Actually, starting with what do you think? Is there an obligation? And I'm not talking legal yet, just a moral obligation for them to help in that situation? Should they be trying to intervene?
No, I don't think that there is a moral obligation. I think some people will feel compelled to help. Some people will want to help, and I think that's okay if you want to help, but I don't think you have a moral obligation to another person, especially like essentially what you're saying if you're intervening in a mugging is that you have a moral responsibility to put yourself in danger to help another person, and I don't think that that's true. I don't think that you have the moral obligation to endanger your own life to help other
Yeah,
people. Like I would want someone to do it for me, but I understand that there is no moral obligation.
this is okay. Let me see here. We're going to do this.
This
I agree with you. If you're going to interfere with a mugging in that way, then you are taking a serious risk of getting hurt, maybe killed. And you have no obligation to put yourself in harm's way for somebody that you don't even know. Now, importantly, Persephone, the episode took place in 1998. Cell phones were not quite as ubiquitous. So if it were to occur today, I would say call the police. You ought to. I think that's fair to, because you're not putting yourself at risk and you are helping to protect somebody's rights, the person that's being robbed.
Yes.
And, Jim says he would call the cops. And I think that is a reasonable thing to do. I don't think that you have any obligation to put yourself at risk.
No.
In that situation. I'm curious what the audience thinks, and we really do want the audience to participate in the discussion. Ask ask questions. If you've got questions about this topic, another topic, feel free to ask. It really helps facilitate the discussion.
So there was even a gag sort of in the beginning of the episode about the cell phones where whatever her name is was making a call to the friend whose
Elaine, yes.
someone was in hospital and she made a call from a cell phone and they were like, "Well, that's the worst type of call that you can make, like a call from the street." And it's like, "Well, that's how everybody makes calls nowadays because no one has a house phone." Well, not here.
No,
So,
but the cell phones today are a lot more reliable than the cell phones there. So I would say call the
yeah.
police. Now, where they cross the line, obviously, these are four very immoral people. I mean, Seinfeld, that's just about the whole shtick of the show is that they're
That
just four.
they're all terrible people who's
Yeah,
experienced no growth and no,
no,
like,
nothing. No. And they're not going to go out and do stick ups or anything like that, but they certainly just don't care about right and wrong generally. And they're making comments about there goes the money for the lipo. At least now he'll have money. And he won't have money to buy food. They're laughing it up
and filming.
and
More
filming and
and
filming it.
filming it happen, which I think takes it from, like, okay, you didn't intervene to, like, you're actively being an asshole.
Yeah, and they're also laughing at suffering, which I don't
Mm,
think is appropriate to be laughing at. I think human beings, there's a basic level of respect that we want for other people because we know the struggle of what being a human being entails, and I think it's appropriate to admire that struggle and to cheer people on to success, and but to mock a victim of a crime and laugh that way is, as Jim Valiant says, gross.
yes, I agree. I do agree.
Expand, go, Persephone.
I don't know what else there is to say. I don't I would never do it, and if someone did it to me, I'd find them later and beat them.
Okay, you shouldn't do that. So
No.
the legal point Jim makes, though, I think is also a good one, is that there's no legal obligation, and there shouldn't be, to help anybody or to even to not laugh at them. If you're not initiating force against that person, if you're not violating that person's rights, then the law has no business getting involved. Now, Katie says, "Isn't it common sense?" I'm not a fan of common sense when it comes to ethics. And I'll tell you why. So I do think there's a lot of people who practice common sense when it comes to ethics, and I think that's good. I'm not criticizing it. But when we're having a discussion, you're coming to conclusions to just sweep things aside and say, well, it's common sense. Because a lot of common sense moral ideas um, are bad. I mean, the idea that you should be sacrificing for other people, that you have duties to, to help other people, even if it's going to harm yourself. These sort of things, that selfishness is just wrong. And selfishness, I mean, acting in your own best interest, is somehow wrong. These are all common sense. No, Katie, don't apologize. It's good that you brought up the topic. So common sense, or what we might call intuitions or ethical ideas that we've sort of imbibed from the society around us, can often be wrong. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that there's not common sense. Be polite, be considerate of others, be honest. I think these are common sense ethics that are usually right. I just don't think we can validate our ethical positions in that way. And as Jim says, most immorality should be legal because most immorality is not violating people's rights.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing that you said about common sense, you draw from society around you. So something that's common sense in South Africa might not be common sense in America.
So Katie says common sense says it's not right to mock a victim. I don't disagree with you, Katie, that it's common sense. What I'm challenging is the idea that we should be relying on common sense for our ethical conclusions. Because if we do that, well, first of all, if it's just common sense, then it's not processed, it's not chewed, and it's not our own conclusion. It's just something, it's common sense. And if we take that tack, in this situation, yes, it would bring the right conclusion, but there are many when it would not. And so we like, there's people that think, well, it's common sense, you don't want to be greedy. Well, why not? Why don't I want to be greedy? Why don't I want to get as much as I can out of this world for myself? Right? What's wrong with that? And someone will say it's just common sense. Well, no, I'm sorry, but you're telling me to act contrary to what I want, contrary to what's good for me. So I'm going to need more than just common sense.
Common sense is like complies with social norms a lot of the time, and social norms are altruism and those kinds of things.
Yes, I'm going out for a meatball grinder tonight, likely after the show. I'm going to take a shower and then head out for a grinder. And I hope everyone by now knows what a grinder is. Mark did not. And I think this is something I think should be mocked, is Mark when he doesn't know what the name of his sandwich is. That's okay to mock. Mocking the victim of a crime, no.
Yeah, but I want to mock you for saying grinder because I think it's a dumb word for a sandwich.
Why would it be a dumb word for a sandwich?
What does that even mean? A grinder?
Because it originated in the 1800s because of the difficulty in chewing. You were grinding the sandwich.
That sounds awful.
Maybe it is, but nevertheless, that's what it is. Grindr is an app. Yes, I'm aware of the gay dating apps. Speaking of to change
gay
the
dating
subject, speaking of gay dating apps, I read today that anti-homosexual attitudes are actually growing in America. They're up 10%.
Yes.
And I just think that's reprehensible. I think that the idea that there's something wrong with being gay is what?
I have thoughts on this subject, and I want to tell you why, like part of the reason why they are on the rise.
Okay, I just want to say quick that this goes kind of to the common sense thing that we were just talking about. A lot of people have just taken in the idea that homosexuality is immoral because it's taught in the predominant religions, which have guided our moral thinking. Well, not personally but as a species for millennia now. So people then think, that it's wrong, even if they're not explicitly religious. Of course, within those same books, there's things about, you kill somebody for working on you stone them for working on a Saturday, adultery is punishable by death, all types of things like that. So, they isolate this for whatever reason. But people's sexual preferences amongst consenting adults is ultimately their business. And I would argue that a person who actually is gay, if they were to suppress that because of what other people think, they would actually be acting immorally because contrary to their own interest. Okay, now you can go ahead and tell us all your thoughts on God, Persephone.
All of my thoughts on God. No, so I have two thoughts about this why sort of distaste for homosexuality is on the rise, and it's two things. Number one, there has been and continues to be a weird pendulum swing from puritanical to bourgeois, right? So the pendulum swings back and forth between like slutty and prudish as the generations go on. So you had like the hippies, and then you had slightly more modest, and then you had back to slutty, and now we're having this swing in the younger generation to a more like teetotaler, saving yourself until marriage, this puritanical kind of thing. So there's that, but there's also people lump together the whole of the LGBT acronym, which is like LGBTQIAA plus, I think. And they lump all of those together into one big amorphous blob. So you have people being really upset at trans athletes and people who are trans going into women's bathrooms and men invading women's spaces. And because they're unhappy about that, they lump it all together into one big, like, well, I hate all of the people who fall under this umbrella term of LGBT. And yeah, so that's part of the reason why there is a bit of a swing towards this people not liking it anymore.
Okay, so Danny, the definition of grinder is literally a long sandwich. So made on a crusty roll, typical filled with sliced meats. Oh, it's especially a Connecticut thing.
That makes sense. Connecticut's weird.
Yeah. It's also called the sub, a hoagie, or a hero. Yeah, I think that you're right. I think that there's often backlashes in that way that when they started to really get into this, whole agenda thing, with cisgender and
Mm.
I think that
Uterus haver. It's my personal favorite. Uterus
uterus
haver.
or mother, what is it, life bearer or some such, all kinds of
Yeah, and
odd.
you can't call these boobs anymore. It's your front chest, or they call it a front hole. It's all gross and ugh.
Danny, there's
Mm.
nothing to disagree about. You're wrong. It doesn't. That's it. Yeah, and I think that people push back against stuff like that. So I think there's something to what you're saying there. I also think that what's the word I'm looking? Grinder is a part of the broader genus of sandwich, but there's a differentiator in that it's long. You need to understand the principles of proper definition, Danny. Genus and differentia. Learn your Aristotle. Okay, so somebody in the chat asked, "What do we think of trans people?" Well, I think that it's a real phenomenon where
Mhm.
people feel as if they're actually the other sex. Um, and I think it likely starts in youth. I think there's a biological component to it, and it doesn't bother me. I think if you have a man who identifies as a woman, I think what you have is a man who identifies as a woman, and I don't have an issue with that. And I really don't care even if he claims to be a woman. But I'm not going to say that a man is a woman because it's factually incorrect. It has nothing to do with the morality of it or anything like that. As a matter of fact, a man who identifies as a woman is not a woman, and vice versa. A woman who identifies as a man is not a man. That's that's just a matter of fact. I don't have anything against people who live that way. I certainly don't think that they should be discriminated against. I mean, I don't think that they ultimately, if people want to play sports with them, in other words, if a man that identifies as a woman, if women want him to participate in their sports, I don't really care. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it should be forced. I don't think that you should have forcing women to play with men who identify as women. But I really don't think there's a moral issue unless it's contrived or feigned in some way, unless somebody's doing it, to fit in with the latest trends. Then I think there's definitely a problem.
So, Mr. Deagle, cite your sources. Culture's pushing them into it. I want to know where you get that from. So, I have a different, not a different take. I also don't, generally speaking, have a problem with trans people. I have a trans friend. What I do have a problem with is men in biological males in women's sports. Biological males going into women's locker rooms, biological males insisting on having gynecological appointments, um, biological males going to waxers who only work with females and insisting that the waxer wax their junk because they identify as a female. So if the waxer has decided that they don't want to work with men, and you say, well, I identify as a woman, therefore you have to wax my penis, I have a problem with you. That's my take.
Um, I don't know about the waxers or whatnot. I think that most of this stuff could be largely solved if we lived in a private society where
Hmm.
people associated with whom they wanted to and weren't forced to. Then, like I said, I don't like the idea of women getting tackled by men. Or but if women so want to, that then I would say that
Yes.
is their choice. But so Mr. Deagle has brought to us very anecdotal evidence. He says, I don't
Mm-hmm.
have a source. I see celebrities who have multiple trans children. That is not natural. Um, that's not really an argument,
Yeah.
right?
Like, look, I
Because
mean, sorry.
not the Guitar Channel entered saying you have to wax my penis. Okay. There's none of that, but no, they shouldn't have to if they if the waxers don't want to do it. I don't know though if they would need to see a gynecologist if they actually had the surgery. I don't know about that. Do you,
Oh, no,
Persephone?
uh, no, not really, because a lot of what like a gynecology appointment for is
Is-
sort of internal,
Yeah,
and they
uterine
don't
and things of that nature,
they
right?
don't have the internals. But the specific incident I'm talking about, because this is a thing that happened, this person had not yet had bottom surgery, so he didn't even have a fake vagina. He just had a penis, and he said, you have to treat me because I identify as woman. And the waxing story is also true. And I think there was huge backlash about this. Uh, yeah. Females participate in male sports and it's fine, but not the other way around.
Well,
Um,
the difference is in the compulsion, right?
yes,
Is that the problem is forcing girls to have men play in their sports. Uh,
yes,
and I think it would be wrong to force men to play with women as well,
yes.
if they didn't want to. So I don't.
Is especially in things like combat sports, um because I don't care how sexist you think it is, most men are naturally stronger than most women. um so when you have things like combat sports, if you are being forced to compete against someone who has a biological advantage, um, I don't think that that's fair. You can choose to compete against men. I choose to, you know, roll with men when I do jujitsu. It's more fun for me to, work with guys. But I wouldn't want to be forced to do it. I wouldn't want to get into a ring with a man and have him like all out try to punch me in the face.
Lee Frazier says, but they're real women, guys. No, Lee, they are not real women. They are men who identify as women. They're not turned into women in terms of their genetics, in
They
terms of having a uterus,
It's
uh,
why when they go to the
fallopian tubes.
it's why when they go to the hospital and they go to the doctor, they still have to identify that they were born a man, because men are prone to different medical conditions. Men have different issues. Women, for instance, don't have prostates, but men do.
Oh, Lee was just being sarcastic. Sarcasm is difficult to read in text, Lee. I'm sorry.
Yes, it
I
is.
apologize.
So Mr. Deagle makes a good point. Girls playing in men's leagues doesn't hurt men, but the other way around does hurt girls. Unfortunately, that is true.
Yes.
Men do have a biological advantage in speed, in strength, in a lot of things. And what ends up happening is that men who have decided that they are women are coming in and competing in women's sports, and they are taking, they're dominating, because of course they are.
And just to be clear, I want to get back to something Mr. Deagle said earlier. I don't doubt that there's some of the cultural contagion going on. I just reject the idea that most of it is
Yes.
caused by that. Like he says the culture pushes them into it. That's why most people are trans today. And that I don't think there's much
I
evidence for.
I do agree that there is a cultural aspect of it, that because this is why you also have what is a relatively high rate of regret in people who do start puberty blockers early and people who do have top surgery. There is a high rate of people detransitioning.
What do you mean by high rate, Persephone?
Actual numbers I don't have. I can find them. I know what will be great for the show, both of us looking at our phones.
No, you keep talking because you're pretty, and I'll find this.
Okay. I would like to know how Lee was manipulated into being trans when she was 12. I think everybody sometimes has times when they wish that they were a different gender. I think that's pretty normal. There's a lot of
What?
times that it happens to a lot of people. Yes, Mr. Deagle, I agree. If there's a psych problem, you first try to fix the psych. In South Africa, before you can transition, before you can start any kind of not puberty blockers, but any kind of hormones, you do have to go through like 12 months, I think, of therapy before, well, back in the day when I was working in sort of that
All right. So
sector.
this is what I've gotten here. I asked how many regret it, and I asked how many detransition. Many scientific reviews and clinical studies show that regret among transgender people who undergo gender affirming medical care is uncommon. Medical surgical transition. A 2021 meta analysis of 27 studies, 8,000 people found on average less than 1% reported regret after gender affirming surgery. Other long term follow up studies that measure actual requests for legal reversal or medical detransitioning find regret rates typically well below 1% to 2%. Some cohort studies show rates under 0.5% or even lower in clinical populations with thorough assessment protocols. Bottom line, regret after gender affirming medical intervention is rare, generally less than 1% to 2% in the best quality research. Detransitioning rates are higher than medical regret rates because many people detransition due to social pressure or non-identity reasons, not because they no longer identify as transgender. See, I didn't even consider that people might trans. I mean, if we're going to argue, right, that there can be cultural contagion that leads to people becoming trans, then certainly there can be cultural pressure the other way to undo
Yeah, to
transition.
detransition.
Yeah, a large US survey found around 13% reported some form of detransition at some point in life, but many of those were temporary and driven by external pressures, and most later retransitioned.
So transitioned, detransitioned, retransitioned.
Yeah, another analysis showed discontinuation of hormone therapy rates ranges. Wow, that's a wide rate between 1.6 and 9.8%, but only a portion of these are due to identity change. So
Interesting.
it seems that it's very, very low for people that
Hmm.
actually regret in detransition.
What what
I
I
don't,
want to
he says that non-binary is 100% cultural. I don't know about that either. I like you have to, Mr. Deagle, if you're going to make claims like that, you have to actually, you don't have to, but I would like if you brought some evidence.
So what I want to know is whether the regret rate or the detransitioning rate is higher now than it was 10 years ago.
If the detransitioning rate,
Yes. So if more people are detransitioning now than they were 10 years ago, because I can understand that the rate would still be fairly low, like in the grand scheme of things, because I know I know quite a fair amount of trans people, um, and a lot of the ones that I know seem very happy. My friend is very happy as a woman. Um, but I also see a lot of sort of anecdotally, I see a lot of people who have detransitioned. So I'm curious whether the rate is higher now than it was 10 years ago when it
All right.
was less popular.
You know what we can do, because we have to go, but we can continue this discussion tomorrow. And to make it very, relevant, I just want to say that there is nothing inherently unethical about being trans, and it's certainly not ethical to mistreat trans people or
Yes.
trans people.
Trans. Trans. Yes.
So
Um,
Mr. Deagle in the last comment says there were no non-binary people or people who want you to call them they them before the trans ideology started getting pushed. I don't know that that's the case. You might be right, but again, maybe do a little bit of research. We'll get to it tomorrow. For now, we have to go. I have things to do. I've got to get the aforementioned grinder.
and
So go ahead,
every
Persephone.
everybody check Michael's Twitter in a couple of hours for the link to the new form on the website where you can submit all of your wonderful questions with your name or anonymously.
Awesome. And while you're doing that, before you've done that, and until tomorrow, and hell, after tomorrow, remember, be ethical. Thank you.